This is the Israeli Defense Force.
And this is the LAPD, where it looks like they're about to go to war.
But what you may not know is the IDF and US police force has been training together for 20 years, training to turn local police into occupying military forces all over the country. So how long has this been going on? Who is paying for this? And what are the tactics that law enforcement, ICE, and FBI is bringing home from training with a genocidal regime? And lastly, what does this mean for all of us here in the US, and can we do anything about it? This all started back in the early 2000s. Israel had been violently occupying Palestine for decades, creating a violent police state, monitoring and controlling all occupied territories in Gaza and the West Bank. After 9/11 sent shockwaves throughout the entire world, it was time for Israel to cash in on their violent apartheid. Israel branded itself as the world's leader in counter-terrorism. The US and many others decided to look to them for training.
And the counter-terrorism activities and Israel has dealt with this for such a long time, and specifically in the last 18 months, I think we've gotten that first-hand knowledge of what to expect, how to react to it.
However, a country built off the back of dehumanization, human rights abuse, and violence is something the US police, ICE, and FBI also took home with them. By no means was this a mistake, because the US had long been funding that violence, and turning America into a ever-growing police state was just the next domino for capitalism's shock therapy of taking human rights. The US used fear and uncertainty after 9/11 to increase all military grade and weapons to local forces. This was due to the 1033 program, also known as the Law Enforcement Support Office Program. This is a federal initiative that allows the Department of Defense to transfer surplus military to state and local law enforcement. Through this program, more than $5 billion worth of equipment have been transferred into the hands of local police. This includes aircrafts, armored vehicles, body armor, grenade launchers, night vision, and assault rifles. You will see this equipment on full display in the ICE raids that are happening in Los Angeles. Who is funding and pushing for the relationship between local law enforcement and Israel to continue to grow?
Because when you have helicopters like this in the air, you should question where they're coming from.
Many of these trips to Israel have come from taxpayer dollars, but the majority of the funding comes from private donors. Some of the private donors that are funding this is the ADL, the American Jewish Committee Project Interchange, the Jewish Institute for National Security Affairs, and even Birthright. These groups have sent thousands of high-ranking officers from all over the country to Israel. In 2020, a document was leaked where the ADL was deciding to cancel these programs due to the violence that was happening in Ferguson and the violence on victims like George Floyd. Two executives from the ADL questioned if they were making officers more likely to use force after their training in Israel. This was absolutely true, because officers coming back from Israel were shocked at the force they were using against Palestinians, saying if they did that here in the US, they would be sent to prison. The ADL did not shut down the program, and instead they doubled down, claiming what they are doing is protecting civil liberties. The ADL has a deep partnership with government, law enforcement, even helping Google and YouTube monitoring their videos for what they call extremism. The ADL is a wolf in sheep's clothing, targeting many leftist creators, one of the biggest at the moment being Hassan Piker, doing hit pieces on them in the media.
Doing a gauzy profile a few weeks ago of this gamer Hassan Piker, who regularly employs awful genocidal rhetoric against Jewish people in the Jewish state.
This is not the first time the ADL has targeted leftists and activists. In 1993, the ADL was tracking over 12,000 activists that supported Palestinian rights and anti-apartheid in South Africa. They were monitoring and tracking them with confiscated police reports that included fingerprints and confidential reports. A large focus was the late great anti-apartheid activist Desmond Tutu.
Desmond Tutu was an exuberant figure, an outspoken Anglican priest who became one of the world's great moral voices. It was during South Africa's long and violent struggle against white minority rule that he rose to prominence. condemning the apartheid government, comparing them to the Nazis.
Of course, all of this information was being sent back to Israel, and when the ADL was caught, they would be sued by multiple people for only a slap on the wrist and a couple $100,000 they had to pay out to victims. Honestly, I might do a whole video on this ADL situation because there are some insane stories. What sort of tactics have law enforcement brought back from Israel to US citizens? High-ranking officers talk about the surveillance in Israel, saying they have a system of 200 cameras where they can track you wherever you go. They have been quoted saying it was like Star Wars compared to what we do. They use biometrics to check people at the border, and after presenting their paperwork, officials can verify them through fingerprints. These quotes are all from 2013, and this type of technology has been brought to the US. The FBI, ICE, and local law enforcement is now using facial recognition, tracking people through social media, license plates, casting a wide net of everyone we interact with on various platforms. With protests in the US, this is where we will find the most evidence of law enforcement using Israeli tactics.
I visited Israel in 2008 with the Georgia International Law Enforcement Exchange and was impressed with several practices I saw during my visit, so much so that I implemented several here in Atlanta. Our Video Integration Center in downtown Atlanta, with more than 5,000 public and private sector cameras, is modeled after the command and control center I saw in the old city of Jerusalem.
One of the main focuses for US police visiting Israel has been what they call counter-terrorism. US police will visit checkpoints in occupied territories like the West Bank and learn how to suppress uprisings and control occupied territories through force and violence. The IDF tactics used on Palestinians is checkpoints, curfews, house raids, and using urban combat in cities to their advantage. The US has adapted these tactics to treat black, brown, and immigrant neighborhoods as threats. This involves the overuse of ICE going into children's schools, pulling people from their homes, and as we are seeing in many protests, the use of high-level military gear and military vehicles used in densely populated areas even when non-violent. The IDF will use psychological warfare and crowd control by showing force, domination, and constant surveillance, putting pressure on Palestinians to always watch what they say and do.
Now I don't know how long it'll take him to heal, and he won't be able to work for a while. He's in a paralyzed situation.
Jihad's son is too afraid to show his face or speak to us. Traumatized and injured, he fears reprisals from the IDF if he's identified.
Flashbangs, tear gas, along with undercover agents that act like they are part of the protests and snatch people up and in many cases in Palestine kill them. And in the US, we see the use of rubber bullets, flashbangs, tear gas, and preemptive arrests and mass detentions. We also see the escalation of what they call less lethal force, firing rubber bullets at medics, journalists, and mirroring exactly how Israel treats Palestinians. You okay? Lastly is the blurred lines that Israel uses between police and military operations. They treat all Palestinians as hostile targets, and anything that approaches them in what they call a suspicious manner will be treated as a threat. The US police have adopted this same mentality where it's them versus us, and allowing local law enforcement to dehumanize anyone on the other side of their weapon. All of these tactics have been practiced and trained on Palestinians, and now they are being used on all of us here at home. If you are going to protest or maybe experiencing these things in your neighborhood, is there anything you can do to fight back? Yes, record all police interactions because they still have an image to uphold for the time being. For larger protests and events, remember, if you are talking about going to protest or liking content on social media about protests in your area, they probably know you are going. And I can't put enough emphasis on this one. Keep your mouth shut. Do not lie, just keep your mouth shut.
I'm Denise Heberly.
And I'm Bill Goodman.
Together, we've been fighting fascism for over 50 years.
And so much has changed over those 50 years, such as the ingredients to a successful firebomb.
And the glass that bank windows are made of.
But there's one thing that hasn't changed over 50 years, something that is so important to tell you kids who are new to this movement.
Shut the f up. You're sitting in the police transport van after a protest?
Shut the f up. In a holding cell with your comrades?
Shut the f up. Cop knocks on your door?
Shut the f up.
Texting on an unsecured device?
Shut the f up.
The reason they are trying to ban masks from protests is because it reduces facial recognition. Hats, sunglasses, masks can all help reduce facial recognition of them being able to track you. Understand, they have eyes in the air, on the ground, so remember, if you are doing something that might be perceived as bad, they may not arrest you right away. They have mentioned they are going to use body cams and cameras on cars to identify people later, so keep that in mind. What we can do outside of direct contact with law enforcement is hound our politicians to stop using our tax dollars and police to try and control us. They have tried to ban BDS laws for a reason, and that's because it hits them where it hurts. And lastly, good luck, mates.